The words that facilitate enlightenment doesn't mean that to make one understand or not. So the sum up of terminologies has to be used well. Terminologies that don't grasp for themselves, they dissolve themselves. The words that create delusion with knowledge talk about knowledge. If you want to make someone being deluded to knowledge, then just know all over about this and that, being deluded to knowing, to knowledge. Even knowing about being empty. If you want to make people know and being deluded to knowing, then just go on to share knowledge, to teach about knowing. On the contrary, if you want people to be enlightened, don't talk about knowing. Talk about cutting. Talk about letting go, putting down. If you want to teach people to be enlightened, don't teach about the knowing. Instead, talking about letting go, putting down, and being bygone. Naturally, the enlightenment will be there. If you want to make people being deluded to knowing, then teach about knowing. Then the people will continue to be deluded to knowing. They will be attached to knowledge, opinions and meanings, on and on. So it's up to how you want to teach people. If you want the people to be fixated to wisdom, then go on with opinions and meanings. Make them understand like this, like that. Go on always explaining, diligently, blah, blah, blah. Being fixated to opinions and meanings and wisdoms, diligently explaining, and that they will be fixated to opinions and meanings according to the one who explained. If you want people to be enlightened, don't teach about knowing or knowledge. Understanding or not understanding. Teaching people to be enlightened, then teaching something that is direct, to let go, to put down, to let it be bygone. Say something directly about cutting, about letting go, about being bygone. That is teaching people through enlightenment. If you want to teach people to be deluded, diligently explain to them. They will be deluded according to your own delusion of knowing. If you want the people to be deluded, diligently explain so that they will be deluded to your knowing, to your knowledge. If you want to teach people to be enlightened, don't teach about knowledge and knowing. Don't diligently explain and blah blah blah. This story, that story. Reflecting the letting go, the cutting, the putting down, ceasing the ceasing itself, reflecting the cutting of the cutting itself, mind to mind itself, reflecting not related to not related itself. This is teaching about the enlightenment. If you want to teach the people to not being enlightened, then diligently explain more and more, blah blah blah, more and more, to this story, to that story. In this way, they will come down according to your own opinions and meanings. And then competing to know, showing off opinions and meanings and knowledge. Showing smartness is like showing off the stupidity. Smartness and stupidity are the same thing. It's from the delusion, which is from the same delusion. If there is no delusion, neither there is smartness or stupidity. If you want to reflect towards the enlightenment, talk directly. Talk about not related to the non-relating itself, not attached to the non-attachment itself. They will end accordingly. They will be enlightened accordingly. Put down even the putting down itself. Not attached even to the non-attachment itself. Let go even of the letting go itself. With this, they will be enlightened accordingly. Cutting deluded knowing will be accordingly, directly. If you want them to be deluded to knowing and wisdom, diligently blah blah blah, more blah 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 with this matter or that matter. Diligently imagining blah 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 on and on, more and more. With this, it will make people to be deluded to knowing, being deluded to understand. They will follow with the delusion to see with opinions, following the delusion with knowledge. But this is not being enlightened. This is not cutting deluded knowing. There's a lot of this. Full on in the world, in samsara, in the TV screens. In order to talk to make people deluded to knowing, diligently blah blah blah. Diligently explaining with this matter, that matter. They'll be circling with just deludedly understanding and not understanding. In conclusion, both understanding and not understanding is just a deluded opinions and meanings. We are here sitting and eat something. It's not for the taste of being delicious or not. It's just to release the hunger, that's all. All the life is just that. Just not having to have hunger. It's not up to the taste of being delicious or not, good or bad. It's just to alleviate the suffering of hunger. You have to be enlightened to the reality that Not having doesn't even exist. All that there is just in the state of assuming up, to bless, to bless, to bless. You have to be enlightened to the reality of the blessing. Just assuming up blessing, that's all. The assuming up is not real anyway. So just use the essential codes that has been given to help dissolve samsara. Everything is from not grasping for the non-grasping itself. Discard even the discarding itself altogether. Not grasping even for the non-grasping altogether. Continue to use these essential codes to dissolve on and on all the assuming up. Sometimes the assuming up is too much, being fixated to itself and being deluded to itself. Therefore, dissolve it at the same time. Everything is from not grasping even for the non-grasping itself. So who will be empty or not empty? There will not be such a thing. Everything is from not grasping even for the non-grasping itself altogether. That's the conclusion to dissolve the assume up. Conclusion to dissolve the assume up, assuming up, and let it be bygone. The delusion means that the assume up still grasps for itself, still fixated to itself with the delusion. So use the essential codes to dissolve all the overlaying of the assume up with the delusion, with everything, not grasping even for the non-grasping itself, not attached even to the non-attachment itself. This will give ending and dissolving the delusion that overlaying the assuming up, because it makes the assume up to be fixated to itself, to hold on to itself. Later on, the assume up will be bygone without delusion. It's the great compassion that is assumed up all the same. It's the blessing that is not deluded to itself, that is from not grasping even for the non-grasping itself. It's from not attached even to the non-attachment itself. So you have to remind yourself with these codes very often. The assume up will be the same. Using the assume up of the reminders all the same, but not the same as before. Because there is no delusion. If not, the assume up will be deluded to itself because it's excessive. That is in the way of delusion. From not attached even to the non-attachment itself, from not grasping even for the non-grasping itself, the attachment of the assume up will not be the same. It will be in moderation from each assume up. It will be in the way of moderation and in the way of bygone. It will not be excessive as before. Assuming up over the top. That is the assume up that is fixated to itself, that is being deluded to itself, is excessive. Actually, the assume up doesn't grasp for the one who assuming up. Naturally, the assume up doesn't grasp for itself, even for the one who is assuming up itself. That is the Satya Dharma. That is its nature. So use the reminders to dissolve the delusion continuously. Everything is from not grasping even for the non-grasping itself, as it already is, as it already is, as it already is. Everything is not attached even to the non-attachment itself. already as it is, as it already is. So whenever you remind yourself with these essential quotes, it will dissolve the delusion that cover up the assume up of giving. Whenever the delusion is there, that it fixated to the assume up, there will be a purification, there will be a dissolving. Everything is from not grasping, even for the non-grasping itself, as it already is. Everything is from not attached, even to the non-attachment itself, as it already is. It's not about someone who is grasping or not grasping, attaching or not attaching. This is the nature of the reality, that it is as it is. It's already as it is. Don't waste the time to be stuck with just upholding and compromising with samsara. Facilitate through cutting directly, so that you don't have to be exhausted for so long. Each assumed up is a suffering in itself. The great compassion is also the suffering in itself, but this great compassion dissolves itself. Therefore, the suffering is not detained. The suffering that doesn't grasp for itself as it already is, no problem. You can always assume up the great compassion like this continuously.